A new civil war has been sparked in the Tory party over the Prime Minister's plans to crack down on vaping and smoking. Rishi Sunak has today vowed to end the use of disposable vapes and limit flavours that appeal to children to tackle the rise in young people taking up the habit. He's also planning on making smoking illegal for anyone born after the 1st of January 2009. But the former Prime Minister Liz Truss has described his plans as unconservative. She thinks the nanny state policy gives succour to those who wish to curtail freedom. Sunak defended his plans earlier today.
The children shouldn't be vaping. We don't want them to get addicted. We still don't understand the full long-term health impacts of vaping. So it's right that we take strong action to stamp this out. That's what we're doing. Banning disposable vapes, taking powers to go after the flavours, the appearance, the packaging where vapes are displayed in stores, but also improving enforcement, making it easier to levy on-the-spot fines at retailers who shouldn't be selling to kids. Taken together, it's a strong set of measures so we can improve our children's health. It's the right long-term thing for the country.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has come out in support of Rishi Sunak's plan, but says it's being introduced far too late.
We've been calling for this for 2 years. So I do have a question for the government, which is why has it taken 2 years to get to this stage? We've wasted 2 years. I've also got concerns that apparently the Prime Minister is going to give his MPs a free vote because he doesn't think that he's able to hold his own team together. Well, luckily, the Labour Party will always act in the national interest. We will vote for it, and so this measure will go through. But it'll only go through because the Labour Party is the grown-up in the room.
Well, the figures suggest that 7.6 of 11 to 17-year-olds regularly vape. People say anecdotally, go to a children's playground, you'll see very young people vaping away contentedly. So this is an issue of sorts. The question, of course, is what ought to be done about it. Joining me in the studio right now, talkTV's chief political commentator, Peter Cardwell. Good to see you.
Hi.
And former Conservative advisor, Charlie Rowley. Thank you for coming. And down the line, we're joined by Dr. Caroline Johnson, a Conservative MP. Why don't we start with Dr. Johnson on this one? So can it be said to be unconservative or anti-conservative or, instrumental in curtailing our very important civil liberties to try to do something about children vaping?
No, absolutely not. It's very conservative to protect children and young people and very conservative to protect the environment, and these measures on vaping do both of those.
And is it true, though, as yet, we don't really know what harm, if any, is caused to children by vaping? I have certainly, on this programme, spoken to the parents of and to a young person who got desperately ill as a result of being a kind of almost chain vapor. So there are kind of instances, aren't there, of children having a very bad reaction to vaping?
So there are concerns about children using vapes. We've heard concerns from teachers about children not being able to continue through a whole lesson without needing to leave to vape because of their addiction. We don't know what the long-term health effects are. What the Chief Medical Officer has said very clearly is if you are a smoker, then the vaping may be useful to help you quit. But if you're not a smoker, particularly for children who are obviously not smokers, then this is not a good idea and they should not take up vaping. What these measures do announced by the government today is to help to reduce the appeal of vapes to children and help to reduce the accessibility of vapes to children.
So we've heard a great deal about this. We've been talking about it endlessly on this programme and many other programmes. What is actually being announced today that is different from anything that's been announced before?
So my understanding is the Prime Minister is going to get rid of the disposable vapes. We know that they're the cheap vapes. They're more likely to be used by children. Estimates are that we're disposing of 5 million of these a week. They're essentially single or very few usage plastic device containing chemicals, containing a lithium battery in many cases, that are being discarded somewhat willy-nilly across the countryside, posing a threat to wildlife and the environment. The second thing that the Prime Minister has said he's doing is looking at the flavours, the colours that we know have been so attractive to children. I mean, why would a grown-up need a unicorn milkshake flavoured or gummy bear flavoured teddy bear shaped vape in order to quit smoking? So those measures will help to reduce the number of children who take up vaping.
Dr. Johnson, it's Peter Cardwell here. I know that obviously enforcement is part of this, but in terms of the fact of the law as it stands at the moment, it's already illegal to sell these to under 18s. So why is a change in the law needed? Do you think, surely if the law was just enforced, then the problem would go away?
Well, that in theory possibly, but we know that that is not effective. And having these vapes of such bright colours as your displays are showing, and having them so close to where children can see them in any shop and so cheaply, means that they are becoming accessible to children. The bubblegum flavoured ones are attractive to children. And one of the things that the Prime Minister has announced today is that he will look to have the display cabinets put behind the counter in the same way as tobacco products, so that children are not enticed into wanting these products.
I mean, repeatedly we cover the story, and I know you'll be familiar with this, Dr. Johnson, the scourge of shoplifting, which seems to be incurable. So whether it's a big chain or a small one-off business, police don't come if they're called. Shoplifters operating gangs. If you steal something less than the value of £200, nobody really does anything about it, so you might as well walk out with what is tantamount to a free gift, only it isn't, because it costs the shop owner or the chain, and it costs other shoppers. It's a theft that's seemingly has no victim but has many victims, and nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. So what makes you think that whatever's announced today about pastel-coloured vapes in yoghurt flavour is going to make a ha'porth of difference to young people aged 11 to 17 who are thoroughly enjoying vaping, evidently?
Well, there will always be a small number of adolescents. Adolescence is a time of risk-taking behaviour and pushing boundaries. There will always be a small number of adolescents that do that. But whilst you have an easily available item that's got child-friendly flavours and colours, and is in a position where children can see them, as even toddlers can see them as they walk about, they're more desirable. If it becomes an illegal product that's more difficult to get hold of, it will restrict the number of children who take it up. Of course, there is no measure that you can ever take that will stop every single person from having access to any individual item, as we can see with drugs.
Let me bring Charlie into this. Obviously, the argument is rife today that interfering in this way in the sale of particular products is unconservative. It's not what Tories are supposed to do. It's contrary to libertarian tendencies, civil liberties, and our freedom to make terrible decisions if we want to. And I suppose you could say indirectly our children's freedom to make terrible decisions. If we want to, eat a large pizza and follow it with a trifle and be fat, that's up to us, and nobody should stop us doing it. And similarly, vaping. Do you agree that it's kind of anti-Tory to stop it, or do you think this is the moment for nanny state to step in, and nanny state can be Tory?
I think that's absolutely right, and I think the doctor there articulated that very well. It's both for the healthy and better for the environment and for the health of young people. And I think, people would have said the same thing about the smoking ban. People would have argued about wearing seatbelts in cars. People were against that, and they were against it.
Certainly did, yeah.
But now it's broadly accepted, widely accepted, actually, that was the right approach. And I absolutely agree that shopkeepers that are selling to these kids underage need to be heavily fined. But I don't necessarily want to see police officers taking up their time going into these shops constantly, of which there are plenty of shops now selling these vapes.
But Charlie, the law is...
I want to see police on the streets tackling the crimes that we all want to see them dealing with.
One of my best friends died from lung cancer. I would happily have nobody smoking in this country and nobody vaping in this country, so I just want to set that out. But I do find it strange that we have existing law that says that this is illegal to sell to people under 18. That's clearly not being enforced. So we have one law that's not being enforced. So the government's answer is to have another law to say, well, we're going to get rid of these flavours and all the rest of it. That's sort of all right, but why not enforce the law that's there already?
Well, I think it's obviously, because of the statistics that we've heard, there are too many occasions where people are selling to young kids.
Well, enforce the law then.
So, but if we as I said before, you could have police going into these shops, day in, day out, and rather than be focusing on tackling the real crimes of burglary or theft or muggings that we see.
But it is a real crime.
But you can, to prevent even the enforcement, you just prevent the vapes being available in the first place. And I think that's
Except they will
right.
continue to be available because adults are allowed to buy them. So they will exist. It's not that they're not going to be allowed to be manufactured. It's not like being in possession of a gun. You're allowed to be in possession of a vape, and anybody is. It's a question of how old you are when you purchase it, but we all remember what we used to do with alcohol, which is you send a grown-up in to get it for you if you really want it, or an older child, or somebody that's precociously overdeveloped at an early age, and they go and buy it, and you smoke away to your heart's content and get drunk behind the bike sheds. We all remember that. I mean, these things are easily circumventable, particularly if there's nobody really enforcing them, particularly if they're already law and everyone's ignoring it.
Well, I just think there is such a growing problem in this area to remove the attraction of it. So you know, they're marketed like sweets, you know, at the minute, and, you know, because of those flavours. And I'm nothing against you if you're an adult and you can make that choice. But when it is so appealing and so attractive to young people, where we don't know the long-term health benefits, yes, okay, it might be good if you were a former smoker to move on to vaping, but we don't know if you just start vaping what impact that has on your long-term health prospects.
Well, you're inhaling nicotine, and that's not
and the
good,
nicotine,
you know?
exactly. And we know one substance, which is exactly right, that nicotine, which does become addictive. And I just don't think that that is something that, as a country or society, that we should be.
Dr. Johnson, are you still there? Because I just want to ask you something. If you are, yes, you are. Great.
Yes.
It's been suggested to me today that this vaping, I don't know, drive or this push to get rid of vaping is just another Rwanda. It's one of these issues that can be talked about. It adds up to a hill of beans. Nothing's ever really going to happen. It's already enshrined in law, which has been ignored consistently. It's something that the government thinks is appealing and thinks that people really care about, but actually it's a minority interest. Only 7.6% of 11 to 17-year-olds vape anyway. And no one really cares, but it's going to take up an awful lot of time, an awful lot of energy, and all you're really doing is reiterating something that has already been said and already set up. So it just shows a kind of powerlessness, a kind of vacuum at the heart of whatever it is that the Tories decide to tub-thump about on this particular day. It could be Rwanda, when we haven't sent a single person to Rwanda, and even when we do, if we ever do, maximum of about 700 people. There are thousands and thousands of people to whom it might apply and never would, should it ever happen, which it looks very unlikely to. And this vaping story is another Rwanda because it has no substance, no essence, no means of enforcing it. And if it were enforceable, it would have already been enforced. It's a big old waste of time.
Disagree profoundly with that, actually. First of all, it's nothing like Rwanda. This is laws that we can bring in a two-step process. My understanding is that we can use existing environmental legislation to add a second piece of legislation to bring in the disposables ban through environmental legislation. And then we can use the forthcoming smoking legislation to bring in the measures on vapes and colours. I understand what you're saying about ideology. Grown-ups should be able to do whatever they want, have a green gummy bear flavoured if they want. But as an adult, what I see is that yes, maybe I should be able to have whatever I want because I'm a grown-up. But as a grown-up, I recognise the need to protect our children. And I'm prepared to make the choice. And I think the vast majority of people, of adults around the country, are prepared to make the choice to not have green gummy bear and unicorn milkshake flavoured vapes available to them in order to protect our children. It's a case of pragmatic conservatism.
Charlie?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, I think actually this whole package of measures that we're talking about today, the more difficult one for the government, I think, is the smoking ban. I think on vaping, I think people are very clear about the packaging and the appeal to kids.
All right, let's talk about the smoking ban. The smoking ban is so intricate, it's difficult to understand. If you're born after that particular date, the kind of argument is that you'll never quite be old enough, however old you are, to smoke. Is that right? You'll never, however, even when you're 43, you'll still be too young. You'll never grow old enough to be allowed to smoke. And nobody understands that, including me, as you can see.
I think it's basically...
How the heck does that work anyway?
I think it's basically unenforceable. And
what does it mean, though?
It goes with you. So if you are someone who's born after the 1st of January 2009, you'll never be able to. You'll be 43 and you won't be able to buy it, but someone who's 44 who was born before 1st of January 2009 will be able to.
Okay, so
it's unenforceable.
So is that
silly.
A whole load of tosh or what?
Yes.
I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, also you have adults. You have adults who have different rights. I mean, the whole point is...
Yes, exactly.
You have
Either you're
16,
an adult and you're allowed,
you have rights at 16,
or you're not.
You have rights
at
18, you have a few rights at 21, but you'll have people who are, 57 and 56, so you have different rights.
And it should go back to just that element of choice. So you could have a ban up until 21, obviously making it illegal to vape or smoke up until 21. And then once you are old enough and clearly an adult to make those choices, if you want to get through, obviously, the adolescent stage that the doctor was talking about there, where people do make interesting choices about life. But, once you become an adult, you can choose if you want to smoke. Obviously, it's not a good thing necessarily, but you can vape. But I just think... You're absolutely right, Peter. If I'm, 43 and a 42-year-old next to me, one can buy cigarettes, one can't. I mean, I don't think asking shopkeepers to ID people into their 40s and 50s when they're...
I don't think there's a single person, I don't think there's a single adult in Britain today who's a sentient being who doesn't know that smoking is dangerous. Yeah. Show me the person, it's on the packets, there are horrible pictures of diseased lungs and all the rest of it. If people want to do that, maybe they should be able to, knowing the risks. I know it's addictive, I know it's it's many people will call an addiction, even a disease, to be addicted to nicotine. I don't want anybody to smoke. But at the same time, it's a bizarre plan.
Is Dr. Johnson still around? Dr. Johnson, if you're there. So you could be 41 and not allowed to smoke, but somebody who's 41 3/4 or 42 or something would be allowed to smoke. Is this enforceable? Is it even desirable? And how can you have different laws depending on your age? It does seem
New Zealand
really weird. I know
on it,
New Zealand are doing it, right?
Yeah, they've U-turned on it.
Oh, they've U-turned. They've already, but I thought so. They've already abandoned it. It was just too complicated. Is this an absolutely, I'm trying to think of the word for it, an absolute turkey, this one?
I think it's going to be complicated to bring in. The principle behind it, I think, is solid, which is that most people who are smokers, when surveyed, wish they didn't smoke, even if they have been unable to quit because of the profound addiction. And most people who smoke start smoking before the age of 25. So it does make sense to try and prevent those young people from starting smoking in the first place. And we did see the number of people who start smoking reduce when we raised the age from 16 to 18. So the theory goes that if you raise it further till at least 25, you will then stop people starting smoking in the first place, which does make some.
Why not do that then?
Yeah, wouldn't that be easier rather than the sliding roll-up scale? However old you are, you're never old enough. It is. You've got to admit that is a really weird one. That's a kind of Benjamin Button policy that doesn't seem to make an iota of sense to man or beast. And I don't want anyone smoking either. I certainly don't want my grandchildren vaping. My God, I can't think of anything worse. I'd love them not to. Of course I would. But just the way this is being done is bewildering. And you know, whoever it was that said to me today, you know, this is the next Rwanda. I really wanted to say, oh, it can't possibly be. But the more I thought about it, the more I wondered whether they were right.